I'm Fred Whiting, the CFO of American Veterinary Group. I've been with Solver for about a year, a little bit over a year and a half now. We did do our first full annual budget with workforce planning at the end of last year, and since then have been operating off of it for all of 2021, and the results have been great. We're basically an operator of veterinarian hospitals in the southeastern United States. What I'm going to show you is basically, I'll try to get through as much of them as I can. We have 4 templates that we set up, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our business first. Our key driver is doctor capacity, and what doctors will have on hand is a basis for driving what revenue we can forecast. As Jonathan said earlier, payroll is often the largest expense, and that's no different for us. It's our largest expense, but it's also a key driver of where our revenue comes from. Some key assumptions or KPIs that we look at are days, for example. We look at it 2 different ways. How many business days will a location be open? And then how many doctor days can we plan on? Business days obviously are the open days, and the doctor days are how many doctors will be working during those open days. Then we need to plan for a few questions. Will we have the same doctors? Will we have new ones? And then can the existing doctors grow, or will they stay at capacity, or what will be the capacity for the new doctors? So what I have here is our revenue template. I'm going to go through how we have this structured, which is basically into 4 different sections on this first tab, where we have columns for each doctor. And then the end goal is to have an annual plan for each doctor and a completed revenue plan for that location by the time we finish filling out this first template. So section 1 is basically bringing in, like Jonathan said, each doctor, we upload into the payroll section and the personnel section of Solver, a ton of information on our personnel. We actually do it on every pay cycle, so that's always updated, and we can run constant month-end reports off of a lot of personnel files. So what we bring in for each doctor is basically their annual rate, as well as the number of days they're supposed to work, and that kind of stuff. And that's the first section. The second section really just walks through what is that doctor's personal performance with the company, how much revenue have they driven, what has been their visit count, and what has been their transaction rate. And those are 2 other key drivers of what drives our revenue. So we have that here in section 2. So we can basically be looking at what has been their historical performance, as well as did we use any relief vets, or sections for are we going to hire a new grad, or are we going to hire an experienced doctor in the coming year? So we have those sections as well. Finally, the meat of the template really comes into the third section, where for those key drivers that I had mentioned, we're going to talk about pet visits. How many visits are each doctor going to be able to do? For the existing doctors, we'll increase it based on a percent, or we'll do a number of visits per day, either up or down, that we expect. We also have inputs for the transaction rate. We expected them to increase 6%. Usually we could put in 6% right here, and this would drive 6% for every doctor. So we don't have to enter it for each doctor, because usually we do a 5, 6, 7% price increase each year. So that's kind of what that serves. Or do we expect new doctors to individually change in the type of revenue they do in the next year? We decided to also have the feature to change rate by doctor. Finally, what number of doctor days are we planning on for those doctors to work in the coming year? As you may have seen up here in section 2, doctor number 4, and they've only worked 18 days because they were a new hire towards the end of the year. But now we're going to put in, we expect them to work 219 days in the coming year. So those are the key inputs that we have. It's just basically it's volume through visits, it's transaction rate through the price, and then how many days do we expect a doctor to be working. And then the final section on this template that we did was really just to compare those results against history and see what the overall impact was in that location. Here you can see for that hospital, there's going to be no change in the number of days they're going to be open. They're going to be open 308 days. Now, with the new doctors that's coming on board, you can see we've added 108 doctor days. So that's going to be the real driver of what's going to be driving the increase in revenue for this location. What's the impact going to be on visits? It's a 23% increase on visits compared to last year. On each doctor day, it's still, we monitor how many visits per day each doctor is going to be doing. And in overall, you can see this is a 16% impact on this location's revenue for the next planned year. And then we just have also the transaction rate, We also have each doctor's revenue per day, then what the compensation is going to be based off of that. So this is a high level first template that we have that after getting this done, we'll know what our revenue is for that location, it's being derived by the doctors, and then more importantly, we'll have a lot of the compensation figured out, because like Jonathan said earlier, compensation for us is our number one expense. It's usually around 40% of total revenue is compensation based purely. We do have two other tabs on this template real quick. We do have a new DVM tab. This is where, again, we add in the same simpler drivers that we would have for an existing employee, for whether or not they're going to be a new grad, whether or not they're going to be an experienced hire. We also have the third tab, which is once we basically take that revenue derived, the revenue derived by the doctors, we will ascribe percentages of what will be the other revenues that are typically driven off the doctor revenue. So grooming, boarding revenue, product revenue, and prescription refills are a couple of other categories that we then budget for. And then we have a section for how we allocate out the revenue over every month for the current year. So that is our revenue template. Then the other template I was going to walk everybody through would be our team staffing template. Similar to what Jonathan mentioned, and I've mentioned before, we have all of our payroll information loaded in the system. And with that, we can basically have in here the hourly rate, how many hours a month everybody works. That information is brought in from this employee detail tab. We list out all the employees here. And then our input is going to be, do we expect them to work the same amount of hours as they've been run rating on a monthly basis, or do we expect them to work more or less? So that's a big input there. So we take our existing staff, plan for budget for them. We have a rate increase, what month that rate increase is going to happen. And then we have a per month cost, as well as a total hours, because we monitor hours worked for our existing employee base. Then more importantly, we have a section in here where we could add in new staff. That's going to be the hire date that we expect, hourly rates, and the number of hours that they work in this section here. So similar to what Jonathan had shown in his template, we have the ability to enter new staff. But this is just the staff that supports the doctors. Any new doctors was done on the revenue template. And then just from a high level perspective, this template is important for us because it allows us to then look at the total revenues. We bring that in, we bring in the total, the percent of each of these categories. And so we can compare that for what our expectations are. We have the doctor salaries in here. We have total compensation down here, and we use this to be able to budget certain percentages for bonuses on certain people, as well as we have a section in here to do PTO accruals and holiday pay and that kind of stuff on the ones that we know holiday pay is going to hit. So this is template number 2. And I'll go through the next 2 real quick because I know we're getting a little bit short on time, but we do have a separate template where Jonathan was showing it before below. On ours for payroll taxes, payroll fees, and insurance, we have the same thing where we bring in the employees and we bring in any new hires that are going to be on here. We bring in what the monthly payroll is now that we've already budgeted for it. And as we scroll to the right, you'll basically just see that we're calculating what the accumulating payroll is for the year, because that will drive your federal and state unemployment taxes. As soon as you reach a dollar limit, those taxes get taken away, that you don't have to pay them anymore. And then this is the input sections. We have a payroll fee section. We have health insurance. This actually is uploaded because typically when we're doing the budget, they have annual renewals already done. So we know every employee's actual selected health insurance. So we have that in here. We bring in the workers' comp insurance that's going to be charged, federal and state unemployment, like I already mentioned. And then, of course, your federal, your FICA, Social Security, Medicare sections. We just kept this as a separate template. It's easy to do it because all you have to do now is run it, save it back for each one of the locations. And this step actually takes just a minute or 2 to run and save back. So it's a really easy process. And real quickly, the final template that I have is an operating expense template. So like Jonathan's P&L, we have basically a section in here where we bring in the prior year history. We will actually bring in a rolling 12-month calculation of the percent of revenue, a 6-month and a 3-month, so that we can look at different trends and how much we want to kind of budget for. Then our operating expenses is just merely we take and go down, do we want to do a percent to revenue based on one of these 3%? And if we do that, then we don't have to allocate it monthly. And when you do that on the next section, this is how that budget gets allocated out. So that's all right here spread out on what the budget will look like. So basically we go straight on down the P&L and then we can either hard code in dollars to know what it should be on a monthly basis, or we can do percent to revenue. If we know like credit card, merchant fee transactions, bank fees are always driven on a percent of revenue, we have that in here as well. And so then once all that's done, here's our budget here. We, just like Jonathan had, we have a total column. We can compare that total column against what the prior year actual was and get down to our increase in EBITDA as a result of the budget that we've input. So that is it in a quick summary. I hope that was not too quick, but four templates, and our budget for every location is done. And we do have a lot of input with the field on the doctor side and the staffing side that helps drive this.